For the question, okay? So if you have a question for myself, that's a challenge. My name is Yael Mbok. I'm the current Director of Studies in German, hence I'm here representing German. And so basically I prepared two presentations. The first presentation was basically introducing our department, the curriculum, what we're studying in class, the program looks like, and any other activities that we're doing then quite a lot going on. And now the second presentation I prepared is sample teaching. Okay, so this will be about 20 minutes of how a seminar would look like, a challenging seminar I should say. And I'll tell you the one difference that we teach finally seminars in German, and I obviously will deliver this in English. So just in terms of what we do around here, who myself and my colleagues are, we've got, willkommen, staff in German Studies. What you will be learning years 1 and 2, the year abroad, as you maybe already know, based on my colleagues' presentations earlier. All of us presented go for the year abroad, of course, less problems that we can COVID, the war in Russia, etc. So we are prepared for alternatives. So this is issues that prevent them from going abroad. Certainly, we have alternative in place, but we do very much encourage all our students to spend a year abroad. So most of our students spend a year in German-speaking countries, even though certainly I have students who take major in French and German, a very popular combination. And he says, half the year in German-speaking country, the other half the year in French-speaking country, etc. And I will expand more on that later. I want to give you an idea of what our students actually do when they are abroad. And finally, year 4, our community of staff and students. And I'll begin with basically a presentation of our colleagues. I'm an associate professor and the current director of German, and we've got a large department, I should say, with 12 staff members, which I think is a great advantage because in Durham we take pride of teaching our research. I think it's a really distinctive part of what we have to offer. It is not always taught. Okay, there are certainly universities that they have a more conservative strict, rigid curriculum where they teach the same papers every year. This is not the case at Durham. We have a very dynamic curriculum, meaning that if my colleagues and I discover, something new in our research, we are very likely to instill it into our program. I wanted to also mention that specific strength of German studies is strong focus on visual arts and films. Okay, so 3 of my colleagues will specialize, so film professor John belong also on photography. So certainly we do get quite a lot of students who write about film, and I find that also an interest, especially among our ab initio students who will actually come to us with no German at first. I mean, if anybody here interested in this as an option, ab initio. Okay, so I will not expand on that. I will say that we have a very strong admission program, meaning that many of the students who join us with no German really reach excellent level of German at the end. To move forward, this is so far away from the screen, I'm afraid. Certainly in modern languages and cultures, we focus first and foremost on language, as I've already said, in language training. And I would certainly say that our language training is dynamic as well. So to give an example, because our students go abroad in the 3rd year, we do prepare that for them. In our language program, meaning that our 2nd year students ask, for example, to have mock interviews. And many of them are going to work as peers, as law firms, etc. So this is very communicative approach to the language, which is really meant to prepare you for complete immersion in a German-speaking environment. Now, in the first year, those are the 3 modules that are currently offered, featuring the past of different module that we also offer students already early on to focus on film and visual art and culture, identity and politics, reading German culture. Those 2 are surveys, I would say, that introduce our students to German culture from the 18th century and until today. To move now to the second year, so of course there is again emphasis on language training, and I can say that in the second year as well as in the 4th year, we have a very popular module which is interpreting, right? Interpreting, and I said it's a very practical training taught by the college person who is extremely experienced in that. We've got a language lab that really has advanced instruments and techniques that we teach our students, and of course those who are interested in interpreting. So this is an initial part of our language program already in the second year, and then we offer currently those 3 modules. Perhaps I'll say a word about our curriculum. I said before, we take pride of having a dynamic approach in the teaching our research. We are also very serious, very passionate about, how should I put it, challenging the canon, meaning that we not only teach you Kafka, Thomas Mann, and other wise men, basically, who are celebrated in the German-speaking context often in times, but rather, certainly those authors and others are important, and our students are introduced to their writings, and at the same time, we take very, very seriously the attempt to what we say, how to decolonize the curriculum, meaning that we teach migrant authors, we teach authors, for instance, whose first language maybe wasn't German, but they immigrated to Germany from such country as Turkey or Syria. And those are certainly issues that we take into consideration with such classes as sex and identity in German culture, really try to challenge, let's say, certain presumptions that people may have, both about German society, but also about general everyday life, if you will. Okay, so year abroad, year about placement. I've been in Durham now for 4 years, so I can say a bit more about what our students, specifically in German, have been doing, because I'm sure this was the topic also earlier on in our presentation. So certainly a very popular option is teaching language, for example, and we have close collaboration with the British Council. Okay, I certainly had students in Durham who spend at least half of their time abroad teaching English in different German schools, and I know that later on that's an option that they wanted to pursue further after they graduated from Durham, so this could be the means of getting a master's and becoming a high school teacher, or actually also going back and teaching again in Germany later on after they finished their degree with us. Nevertheless, certainly this is only one option, and we've got a good number of students who went, as I said before, to do an internship. Okay, so I mentioned law firms because I had a student this year who is, that's what he's doing. But certainly I know that a good number of students have also did an internship as translators. So those, I would say, are some popular options. I will mention perhaps that we do support our students who come to us with very original ideas and certainly very entrepreneurial spirit. So I know that a couple of years ago there was a student who was really passionate about puppet shows, and she went to Vienna and was an intern in specifically a specific theater that is meant for that. I myself had a student who was very passionate about football, and he went to Bochum in Germany and worked together with the local football team. Then he came back and he worked with me on his dissertation that was about German films that deal with football. And I have to say it was like really amazing to work with him, because I have to say I was a bit skeptical at first, and he just wrote an amazing dissertation, really kind of challenging and really what masculinity is, and basically ended up writing about how those three German films that deal with football actually are about trauma, post-war trauma, and how this is reflected in particular about male protagonists. So he ended up teaching me quite a lot about the topic, and I believe that he pursues further those topics in his current career. I should also say that we have close collaborations with universities, both in Germany and in Switzerland. And we get actually exchange students coming regularly from those institutions. Finally, the final year program, and again, I'm soon going to give a sample of one of those classes, namely of the class on Berlin City of Diverse Culture. As I said before, those classes are taught in German, and I have to say that I'm always impressed by how well our students can deal with this, and that's why you have to get familiar, because when I speak with the first year students, especially our initial students, right, who never studied German before, they are quite intimidated by the idea of having an advanced seminar taught only in German, lecture in German, writing a seminar paper in German. This is challenging, and I have to say that I've never received any complaints from students about that. Maybe that by the time that they get to the time that they are really able to follow advanced material in German and write impressive papers. So the language at that point was, I haven't encountered any issues on that regard. We, as I said before, we try to emphasize a dynamic curriculum, challenging, let's say, some common principles of consumption about the world, dealing with such topics as migration, diverse cultures, multi-ethnic environment in the German-speaking world. Oftentimes, sexuality as well is an issue. I know that my colleague Claudia Nitschke, for instance, introduced this new seminar, Lure of the Exotic, kind of bring it to our students, her research about how the Orient was idealized in German culture and what that might mean. Okay, so I just wanted to end this first presentation, this sort of general introduction to the program, with a few words about extra responsibilities that you will learn. Of course, all they aren't mandatory, but certainly they are very popular activities. I know that the Shanti, a regular meeting of speaking in German while drinking coffee, is very popular among our students. We have well-attended film nights in German in the building where we teach. I wanted to mention, I personally, every year I bring in an author from Germany. This year it was Tom Nadal. Last year it was Sharon Otto, she works at Black Lives Matters and kind of brings it into her new novel, which she discussed with us. Last year we also hold events with journalists from Germany, political theorists from Germany. So it's extremely important for us to maintain a living, vibrant connection to German-speaking environment. And I do have to say, our students are impressively very occupied with this topic. The topic is very, just engaged and very active in helping us create this environment. So this will finish this general presentation now. I mean, do you have any questions, maybe to me or to us?
I was going to ask, within those individual extra optional modules you take, how much kind of flexibility is there within the topic to explore what you are interested in within that kind of topic that you're teaching.
So do you when you write your essay, for example?
Yes.
So I would say that if a final year student comes to me and says, look, this is, I want to work on a text that we haven't studied in class, I will almost always say yes.
Yeah.
Usually there is an open question, like in final year models, not so. In fourth year model, there's a big question, it's quite open. I'm just thinking of a student, specific student who studied with me this year, and she chose to write about two films that I haven't studied, I haven't taught. And that's perfectly fine, and she wanted to study the paper, but I personally would want to hold a conversation with the student just to see that it's manageable. Okay? Normally, as I said, normally the final year models, there are seven questions, that could be additional 3 questions, where the students are, I say, invited to construct some questions using the materials that we study in class. And certainly there is to bring into the discussion other texts, other films. Are there any?
So the cultural modules, they typically taught in English and German and mixture.
Okay, so in the first and second year, they're taught in English, and in the fourth year, they're taught in German. Because we do find that going abroad for a whole year is a game changer in terms of your students' full immersion and the ability to follow lectures in German. In terms of how much exposure to German they can get in the first 2 years, I know that most of my colleagues use German in their slides. We give our presentation. We might speak English, but sometimes some quotations, for example, from literary works will be in German. We will watch films in German. So even though those content models are taught in English in the first and second year, we do place emphasis on exposing them. And of course, the language classes are taught in German.
For the culture, like extra modules, how many teaching hours are there?
Yeah, so I can show again the credits, maybe. Oh, I'm sorry. And you're also invited to go to our handbook online, because actually those kind of very specific breakdown of the hours that you would take is available online. I will say in all of those content modules, okay, year 1, 2, and 4, we meet for lecture every week. This is mostly the instructor speaking, but we do try to engage students, inviting them to ask questions, etc. in the lecture. Now, every other week there will be also seminar meetings. And the content modules have either 2 or 3 seminar books, depending on how popular the class is. Okay, so I would say final year modules often have smaller seminar books, kind of even more opportunities, let's say, for the students to run the discussion themselves in here, to have their group work, or to really dive into the activity. Yeah, I hope I answered.
Just have a couple. About the language core module, how is that sort of, is it a lot of German or so?
So there are actually different groups, okay, and it also varies kind of based on the students' level of German. So I know that our initial students often ask for more support with regard to vocabulary. I know that, for example, for this class, I believe there are either 4 or 5 seminar groups depending on the size, and there will be one unity hour dedicated to grammar. And it's kind of very general, but the more advanced you are in the program, there will be more focus on oral German. So I know that in the final year model, there are already, if I'm not mistaken, 3 hours dedicated to oral practice in German. Yeah. So I would really recommend actually because it's quite modular kind of to go online and really find more specific information. My colleague Tracy, who is directing the language program, she's actually the person teaching this tomorrow. So if someone is very interested in the language aspect of things, I think she would probably be the best person. Yeah. Now, shall we move to say sample teaching content module? I used to live in Berlin. I actually lived in Berlin for 9 years before coming to Durham for this job. I don't regret it. And that's why I was happy to be able to offer a new class, okay, to design a new class about Berlin, which I normally teach with my colleague Simon Ward. Simon published his last book about Berlin and the relationship of contemporary Berlin to the Weimar Republic, okay, the era in the 1920s, 1930s. It's a really interesting period, okay. Berlin was a very culturally vibrant cultural center, okay, and it was also known for its nightlife, for its relative tolerance, and it becomes a very dramatic time because by the time we get to the early 1930s, okay, the rise of fascism also already becomes a threat on those relatively tolerant cultural trends. So that's kind of where I want to take us today, right now, from the sunny, currently sunny northeast to the Weimar Republic in Germany, and I want to turn to this class that we're teaching and kind of tell you a little bit about four of our cultural artifacts that we bring to the table, beginning indeed with the Weimar Republic. Has anybody read maybe a book by Erich Kästner? Have you heard of Erich Kästner? Okay, some people nodding. I will expose that he is known for his children's books, actually. Emil and the Detectives. Yeah, so it might look surprising that I took an author who is known for many writing. When I was a child, I loved his book, Emil and the Detectives, and others. And then I found out later on that he actually published one novel for adults, which is really incredible and actually very, very, very controversial. It was considered an extremely controversial text, even though it was published in an era that, as I said, was actually tolerant. So despite the general tolerance of his time, still this book was considered extremely problematic. And the main reason for it is that the relationships between men and women appear very superficial, shall we say. The protagonist of this novel, Fabian, that's the name of the protagonist, he encounters many women in the novel, and even though he would like to have a serious relationship and marriage, possibly he does not marry. And interestingly enough, Erich Kästner, he in the 1936 edition of the book originally published in 1931, there Erich Kästner wrote a prologue where he engages with this critique. Okay, people said that this book is immoral, but actually he said something very, very interesting. It is, yeah, it sounds better in German. So wir heute noch weniger als damals begriffen werden. It's hard to understand today, even less so than before, that this novel is actually, it's by no means an immoral book, it's an exceptionally moral one. What does it mean that we have a book that is exceptionally moral, where actually, as I said before, most of the time it is about a male protagonist encountering many, many women. This is El Dorado. It was a famous nightclub in Berlin during that time. It's in Mordstraße 15. I don't know if have you been to Berlin before? Have you been maybe to the West Berlin. This is Schonenberg, and famous, still today actually, an important part of the Berlin nightlife. And I'm quoting here, bringing a few passages from the novel, from the beginning of the novel that I translated. So do let me know if there are any issues regarding my translation, because translation, is always involved a lot of choices. And at the beginning of the novel, Fabian is entering a very dubious nightclub. Okay, and it's a nightclub where clearly men and women who are single seek to meet others, and the nature of the relationship is quite unclear, I have to say. So Fabian, when he enters, he has to undergo an interview with the lady at the entrance, and she gives him a set of rules. That's something actually that my students in the seminar engaged with time and again brought up to our discussion, that Berlin has this occupation of, ultimate freedom. People meet each other in dark nightclubs, etc. But actually, each one of those spaces in Berlin has a very rigid set of rules, as Alicia exposes. And so the lady tells the protagonist also kind of very entangled, almost paradoxical set of rules. She tells him, in the premises of the club, no couple has the right to be respected. Couples who wish not to be disturbed are requested to leave the club. Okay, that sounds like the opposite of what one would expect in terms of privacy will be respected. The institution facilitates the initiation of the relationship, not the relationship itself. And members who have temporarily given each other the opportunity to become acquainted are requested to forget this in order to avoid complication. Okay, so presumably Fabian, he goes in to meet someone, and if he does meet someone who agrees to get to know him, both of them are requested to immediately forget about this. Indeed, as Fabian enters the club, several women actually start talking to him. He's always the one being approached by women, quite aggressively so, and he's always the one to also escape as soon as he can, really. And here comes the question of, I think, what H. Kessler defines as this is actually an exceptionally moral book, because all men and all women seem to imagine each other as a future husband and wife. So the first woman that Fabian meets in this club, she asks him, this I have to say in German, sind Sie hier, sich eine Frau zu suchen? Okay? And, it only works in German really, because Frau in German, right, it's both, this is something called Nordic, it's both woman and wife. Right? So, in other words, her question sounds quite dubious, right? I'm looking for a woman. But what the protagonist hears is this a formal proposal? Right? Is this ein förmlicher Antrag? Nonsense. I've been married twice. I mean, the problem is I love men so much that I can imagine everyone I see and like as my husband. Okay? So there's the tendency, what was condemned as this tendency to have so many superficial encounters between men and women becomes this almost parody whereby all men and women can imagine that they will stay with this random person for the rest of their life. Now, I kind of want to step back and look at the cultural, social, and historical background for this phenomenon. And what I do in class to achieve this, I show students a part of a film. It's available on YouTube. I highly recommend if you want the entire film on YouTube. It's a Durham classic, a silent film, because it's also from this era, right? It's an early film. This is from 1930. A film called Menschen am Sonntag. Okay, really fascinating cinematic experiment, because actually none of the actors was actually a professional actor, and the film is titled people on Sunday, and the film wanted to be shot only on Sunday, so the actors could work, their daily jobs. And what I want to show is basically how Berlin looked like, okay, during that time. So the beginning of the film, let me show the film, and I will also talk about what we see. This is the protagonist. His name is Wolf, and just like in English, in German it works as well, because it's like a wolf. Okay, in German English is a wolf looking for prey, if you will. And this is taking place now in Zoologische Garten, already then and also today. A very central junction. Okay, we've got, as you can see, this is the U-Bahn station, the underground. But we've also seen at the very beginning the S-Bahn, this is the S-Bahn, what do you call it in English, actually, the train. And there are as well, there are buses, as you can see as well. There are at least 4 different means of transportation that are based here in Bahnhof Zoo, Zoologische Garten. Now when I think about it, this is also Zoologische Garten, right? It's basically a zoo, as you can see it's so. That also brings to mind the fact that the protagonist is a wolf and he just found his prey. Okay, there's a lady that randomly found her way to this busy junction. And I think one thing that we see here, this is time of recession. Okay, in times of recession, people is lazy, want to say jobless, walking around. The lady, on the other hand, well, she had a date with someone else who did not show up. So that's kind of how our protagonist takes a hold of her. One can say he invites her over to have coffee. I will skip a little bit. Now they're having their coffee, and he's going to invite her to join him and even his friends. This is happening on Saturday, but he will invite her to join them on Sunday. Do what Berliners do, which is on Saturday to going to the lake. I hope you get an impression of this sort of idleness or random kind of, he's clearly, on one hand, seeking prey, as I said, we're talking of hunting. On the other hand, there is a sense of purposelessness, if you will. And I would mention that it's really kind of very dramatic and almost ironic in the dialogue between them, because Wolf tells the lady, the guy who stood you up, was he dark? Did he have dark hair or was he blonde? And the lady said, nobody stands me up, which becomes kind of very ironic, because this man we've just seen, he ends up with the girlfriend that she brings along to the yacht. Okay, so he's only invited her. The man ends up pursuing another lady. So what do we make of it? What's the role of, I already dare to say, the trains, okay, those, this new system of public transportation. So I wanted to, what I tried to do by discussing this film here, and this is the film's original poster, those are the protagonists, that kind of, this random matches that women, we would think that would not found a lady, love story, but actually ended up with her friend. It's a kind of growing urbanization, and Berlin is certainly, representative of that. It's the most important city for this trend. Recession, I said before, allows for people to kind of look around. Purposelessness, as I said before. Mass transportation, we've got masses of people, and we teach in this class also about the community, philosopher, very much wrote about this. What are relationships? What are romantic relationships? What's the purpose? How can one commit when there are thousands and thousands of people arriving in trains, kind of finding each other randomly in those junctions? Now, if those are the, I would argue, historical conditions to those new encounters between men and women, what are the ramifications? What does this lead to? This is another This is a photo from an image from the setting, right, when they go to the lake, and this playful, dramatic, or disappointing replacement of the women is happening. This orientation, okay, the modern individual, in the big cities, the metropolitan, looking around him or herself, quite unsure about where to go. This, as Fabian, as the novel really shows, those new relationships replace very well-defined social systems, namely marriage, religion, okay? Fabian apparently learned his protagonist, he grew up in a village, okay, looking for a wife, that's what his parents have done, but he found himself in the big city, disoriented. Randomality, who is the woman or the man who is stepping down this train, and then decision-making becomes quite a dramatic process, doesn't it? Because the individual all of a sudden is the one who has to decide and has to make, in fact, many different decisions all the time. Now, I'm going to make a huge jump of about, 66 years, 67 years to a movie that is quite famous, I think, Lola Land. I see something from Maldi. Did you like the film?
It's very strange.
No, please.
No, it's just like, it's quite an experimental idea. It's a very interesting way of to explore it. It's all about like, the idea of like what individual action can make.
Right, so that's exactly why I brought this film in the context of decision-making becoming practice, which is so dramatic, right? Because the protagonist, as you're saying, it's hard to follow, it's experimental. Like, it moves so quickly, this film, and, well, in short, Lola has to get quite a lot of money because her boyfriend's money basically he lost, is a kind of involved in certain crime, and he lost a bag full of money, and he has 20 minutes to get the money for him. If not, he will be murdered by this bigger criminal. And so, kind of very briefly, this is not actually available online. If you write it, it's kind of a big competitive industry. And I wanted to mention, actually, with regard to Lola Hand, even though it's such an intense and very rapid film, every once in a while we get a break. We get an intimate, every once in a while, an intimate dialogue between Lola and her boyfriend, Manny. Okay, and that as well as translated. And again, if someone has issues with my translation, do let me know, because I think that choices in translation are not obvious. Anyhow, but what kind of things do they say to each other? Lola tells him, Manny, do you love me? Lips to miss, Nazisha, but becomes that how can you be sure that you meet one woman in this extremely rapid environment, in the big city, where decisions become ever more individualistic and ever more dramatic and ever more random, really. And he tells her, the guy, but do the best of this, you're the best, but the best what? But the best woman of all women? Sure, Nazisha, like that. Yeah, she's quite skeptical, and Lola ends up risking her own life for this man. And so certainly the point that I'm trying to make is that the culture and the urbanization, the social processes that we've seen already in the 1930s are still evident in Berlin, are still present also 60 years later, 66 years later, in the cultural industry, even if we can say they've been intensified, and there are additional historical elements to consider. And by this, I mean mainly East Berlin versus West Berlin, right? This was, that's a historical transformation happening in the shadow of the Second World War, and certainly very close to the release of uh, the wall separating East and West Berlin has fallen, making the clash between Western and Eastern culture into a new tension evident in those protagonists' lives. So I spoke before about Schöneberg, right? Like we discussed the Motzstraße, where that was the center of nightlife in Berlin in the 30s. Nevertheless, by the time that we get to the 90s, and I would say even the present, East Berlin becomes more dominant. Okay, so a lot of events, when you watch it, you see the bridge connecting Friedrichshain and Kreuzberg, and if you remember, Friedrichshain is a neighborhood in the east, right, that is extremely popular, where the nightclubs are currently. And this is a transformation in the history of Berlin, that with the reunification, the East actually became the more vibrant cultural center, certainly for young people. And so to teach our students about this new phenomenon, I bring a fourth and last, don't worry, cultural architect, which is a short story. It's a short story titled Prinzlau Nacht. And the protagonist in this short story deals with many of the issues that we've discussed so far. So namely, she is positioned in Prenzlauer Berg, a neighborhood that is in the east. Okay, Prenzlauer Berg is here, right above Friedrichshain. In fact, they neighbor each other. Prenzlauer Berg is, I would say, the symbol of gentrification and of how East Berlin, that for a long time was deprived, okay, East Berlin, Prenzlauer Berg, when you walk there, you actually see people still today in a very poor communist, private communist area for a while. And all of a sudden, the wall falls, and Prenzlauer Berg becomes the place to be, meaning real estate. Okay, we've got investors coming in, buying flats, all of a sudden people are pushed out, right? That's what happens with gentrification. The neighborhoods like Friedrichshain, the Zollernest, Prenzlauer Berg, become very popular. And I can show one photo to illustrate that. Before returning to our short story, this is Prenzlauer Berg right after the reunification. Anybody knows what you call that in German actually? Occupied building? It's not the squat, right? In English we call it the squat. So in the 1990s, Berlin was full of those empty houses. They were occupied. And interestingly enough, those were cultural centers. Okay, so it's not just homeless people, but that as well. But we're talking about students, artists, and musicians. And until today, actually, you can find the very last buildings that still exist in such a way. But as those neighborhoods, and particularly Prenzlauer Berg, as those neighborhoods became more and more popular, those artists, those students were pushed out. This is how Prenzlauer Berg looks like today. Okay, the same area, right? This is Hermann's Kids. It's a beautiful farmers market, but very expensive. It's really, I think Prenzlauer Berg is the best example for the tensions that are still happening with the ongoing urbanization of the city. Okay, taking into account the fall of the wall and the reunification. And that brings me back to our general topic, which was the encounters between men and women, and how Berlin, since the 1930s, actually facilitated these random, intense, rapid encounters between men and women, where individuals just became more and more disoriented and unsure about how to commit to each other, and that's why I teach this short story, because it's really about the present. And the protagonist, interestingly enough, she describes herself as a wild animal. okay, which is kind of, I connect to Wolf that we've seen before. She wants to devour the men that she meets. She's someone who lived in Hilton her entire life, has several children. We don't know how old she is, but she's maybe in her 50s. And she tells us that all of her friends were kicked out, okay, were kicked out of the neighborhood. They didn't have money to stay there because rents keep rising. Generally, it's not a market for buyers and sellers. People have been renting their flats in Berlin for a very long time. It's different, obviously, than other places. Generally, it's very common to live in a rented property for a very long time, but that puts you under risk if rent keeps rising. And what she does to deal with this reality is to find random men that belong to this new milieu of namely rich young investors that have been occupying her neighborhood. And for her, she says, this is one such man that she meets. Actually, she's not very interested in him. For her, all of those newcomers are the same, they look alike, and what she really wants to do is devour him. And I will quote perhaps just I'll bring the ending quotation, which is namely at the end of the short story, she tells us, I would like to be like an animal. And she says that actually at the end, wolves, the first wolves will reach her. And maybe she will be the last animal remaining in front of those wolves that invade her neighborhood. So I think interestingly enough, the semantic here of the wild animal who is hunting for men is kind of flipped, turned around, and she becomes an animal that is maybe hunted by gentrification, if you will, by the newcomers, by, shall we say, economical logics. Now, I wanted to sum up. I know that's been quite a lot for a short sample session, but hopefully possible to follow. Those are materials that I will be teaching in the course of probably half the term. Okay, so maybe those are 5 lectures, probably not 30 introductory lectures, and then each lecture will be dedicated to each of those cultural artifacts. And I was making the point that historical and social transformations that started in the 1930s, urbanization, recession in the city, translated to an ongoing phenomenon of random encounters. And I did want to mention in closing that our students very thoughtfully also reflect on the differences between those sets. Even though I obviously tried to make the argument that there is a link, there is a connection here, students have pointed out that those are very different historical moments, okay? In the 1930s, we were facing the rise of fascism. Later on, of course, this is no longer a concern, at least, well, as such. And we've also discussed East versus West building. Okay, each of those cultural architects looked at this phenomenon in a different way. Somebody with a nightclub in Schönenberg in the West, they encounter other, say, economical, financial circumstances than those in the East. And last, male versus female perspective. So our students reflected in class on how, well, if we take the novella at the very end, we just merely have a character that is a woman, but she's acting like a man, hunting for, praying in the same way that men did before, or is it actually not the case that such a switch that is certainly more relevant today than it was in the 1930s, that this really has been successful, or say, that a woman can behave in such a way. Well, that is for me.